And hey there, hi there, ho there, hello there, and a gracious good Saturday morning to you. Welcome back to another exciting edition of the Cardinal Couple Radio Hour podcast, where we discuss in one mere hour the joy and excitement of UofL women's athletics. As Case kind of pointed out in an article that he did the other day, we are in the summer doldrums, but we still have some events that are going on that we wanted to cover with you, certainly, as teams get ready for that fall and beyond season coming up later this year. Uh, kind of introduce the guys a little bit. We've got four on board today. Daryl not with us, recovering probably from a night with the rains and the bats down at Slugger Field, sleeping in, I'm sure. But Jeff McAdams in the house with us, who is usually the first one on board. Jeff, what kind of week has it been for you, sir?
Oh, not too bad. Week 3, a new job. It's a lot of fun, having a ball. So that's cool. That's a great environment. Got an email, a random thing I was working on this morning, and got an email from my nephew by way of my brother. He's 12. He doesn't have his own email address yet, but he is building a model rocket, and he wants my help to get telemetry from it, like acceleration, gyroscope data, stuff like that from it. So he wants to get my help to get he suggested a Raspberry Pi and what they call a Sense Hat add-on to it. And I may steer him in another direction, but I've been kind of researching some of that technology to maybe have a fun project with my nephew. So,
Jeff figuring out better ways to blow things up. How
oh
about
yeah,
that? All right.
Sounds like he's already on track to be on the UofL rocketry team.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. Oh yeah, he's the biggest thing that I want to work with him with, and I don't want to push it too hard on him, but is to kind of start him down the path of understanding programming and how to write code. And this is a good way to do that, I think. So,
And make sure and get Case involved in this too, because Case's dad is a master at blowing things up over the years. My gracious.
You know,
Some of the bombs that he's built over the years,
that,
you
look,
can,
the explosive gene doesn't necessarily pass down.
yeah, I mean, the intent is not to blow things
That's true.
up, but
Despite the ongoing joke between mechanical and civil engineers that
right,
civils build things and mechanicals blow them up.
yeah, or so mechanicals build weapons and civils build targets.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
all those engineers, they are a different breed indeed. But
Yep.
we got Case Hoskins, who knows a thing or two about that's in the house with us today. Case, what kind of weeks have been for you?
Well, it's been an interesting one. I've not been able to keep track of what day it is. We touched on it briefly. Like Jeff is in week 3 of his new job. I'm wrapping up week 1 of my fun employment on vacation between jobs. So it's coming off of a 3-day holiday weekend and then into a week where you have no responsibility other than work around the house and pick
Fun.
up some administrative tasks. It's like, I woke up yesterday. I was like, wait, today is Friday. Friday? Yeah.
Fun employment is the best, though. Really, I mean,
Yeah. It's certainly going to be tough to go back to having to remember what day it is, but for now, it's been a nice week. I've accomplished quite a few things. The races last week at the Madison Regatta were a lot of fun. Didn't get too sunburnt. It was a good time, and it's been a nice week. I just bought my own assembly project. It is not a model rocket, but I did splurge and get the Lego Technic set for the new F1 car that they released a little bit earlier this year. So finally got to get rid of some of the cash that we got from our yard sale. And by some, I mean pretty much all the cash that we got from our yard sale, because adult Lego sets are not cheap toys.
As we have just here in our own little small group, an escalation of the Cold War between Case's family and Jeff's family, who will be preemptive, who will throw out the first strike, and certainly who will survive this. This could be fun, folks.
I mean, Case is building a car, and we're building a missile. So
He
I
can
think the
get those
missile's going to
troops
win.
there.
Yeah,
He can get those troops there awfully
I'm in
fast.
danger.
And shoot down those rifle guns. I don't know. It's just too close to call, folks, and I may have to change the site and then call it the Cardinal Couple Holocaust podcast.
Oh no.
Oh,
Oh no.
Jared Anderson in the house as well. Jared been under the weather a little bit this week. Certainly not upset about transfers or anything, but had a touch of something going around. Jared, how are you feeling, buddy?
Yeah, back to pretty much 100% feeling better. Almost there. Was actually out of work one day this week because of how not well I was feeling, and thankfully it was a non-COVID related illness as the COVID test came back negative. But not being able to really stand up or do anything and riding with 100-degree fever was not how I anticipated my week going. So I've been taking nights off all week and uh, catching up on sleep. I think I slept for about 13 hours last night and about 9.5 hours the night before. So not something I'm used to, but I guess while we're not in the heart of sports season, now's the time to catch up on rest and recover.
It definitely cuts down on the amount of selfies you can take with all that sleep time going on, Jared, too,
Yeah, it's looking a little too rough to take any selfies.
But you're feeling better now, and that's the main thing, so we're glad to hear that. And
Yeah, we
don't
may
worry.
actually hit the zoo later too. I'm feeling up to it, and with the rain, it may keep people at bay. So a light crowd is never gonna
Don't
bother me.
hit the zoo.
You
Just go
sure?
to it and enjoy watching the animals. Eh?
Yeah.
Gosh,
Need to renew
hitting
my zoo
animals is
membership
not cool.
anyways. I've let it expire unintentionally, so need to go renew it. So it would be a good day to go walk around.
Yeah, and you don't have to worry too much about sunburn today if you're listening to us from outside the Louisville area. It still looks like it's just beginning to be daylight out there here at 11:06. Kind of cloudy, overcast, a dark kind of day, which
Are expecting some potential storms, but there are a lot of places at the zoo where you can get inside shelters. So
absolutely, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, for sure. It's not a matter of getting stuck out on the sidewalk path in front of the lion cage. There are places you can duck into and override any type of storm. Just don't go into the snake cage. Ooh, no,
I'm
no
gonna try
thanks.
and avoid the snakes as much as possible.
Yeah, I just don't. Yeah, it's not one
You
of my.
guys don't like the Herp Aquarium?
No, 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 no.
I usually make a visit in there, but it's not
just
one of my favorite areas to be.
I'll
just
just kind of walk by and wave. Yeah.
just as long as there's a piece of glass between me and them.
How you guys do that? No, Sonny, go ahead. I'm not
Yeah.
going in. No.
Keep Daniel
That-
Radcliffe away from me when
I
I'm
was
in
thinking
there.
the same
Well,
thing. Harry Potter issue.
Yeah.
That's where our
Yeah.
engineers come into play to design the cages and the plexiglass to make sure we're safe.
I was gonna say, hopefully they're polycarbon, not glass.
Yeah.
Be a little unsafe.
Yeah.
Let's just hope that all is well and secure inside there. As for me, kind of an interesting week following a couple stories that have been going on here locally. One that kind of interesting to see how we'll talk about here in just a little bit. Some of Louisville lacrosse girls playing for Team Canada and faring pretty well here so far with Scott Teeter. We'll get into that in just a little bit, and also kind of following a very sad story about the Run for the Roses Classic here that we'll get into at the end of the show, where one of the participants in that and part of her family were unfortunately hit and put into the hospital, and one has subsequently died since that happened. But so it's always sad to hear something like that. An Iowa commit to Neva Jones, but we of course extend our best to the family, and certainly our hearts are with them. Indeed, Lisa Bluter had a real nice statement on that too. If you follow her, the head coach at Iowa women's basketball, she's a super lady. I've had a chance to interview her before. Very nice woman. So. But let's move it on into a little scheduling and Twitter information. And since I've got Case in the house today, he's my go-to on that normally. So, sir, clear your screen, bring up that massive UofL schedule and for the next week, and jump into it.
Yeah. Well, clearing your schedule is pretty easy when the schedule, or clearing my screen is pretty easy when the schedule itself is clear. He did mention the Lacrosse World Championships. That gold medal match is today at noon. I said in yesterday's article that the site was conflicting whether it was ESPN2 or ESPNU. Clarified that this morning, but I got the article up quite late. So if you haven't seen that, that one is on ESPN2. Checked the YouTube schedule this morning while I was watching the F1 sprint qualifying race, which is over. So it's not going to run into that match at all. Tomorrow, like we mentioned, is the ACC Takeover Day on TV. So just settle in, put on ACC Network, watch some games you haven't seen before, watch some games you have seen before, just have it on the background, do whatever. Make sure that when things like this happen, Louisville likes to tout itself as a media market, consumer of college sports, and as things continue to evolve in the landscape of college athletics, it's maybe a good thing to put action behind those words and make the ACC network look good on a day when Louisville is featured. As for the rest of the week, that is all that I'm aware of. Like I said, the UofL calendar is empty. Those are just the two events that I knew of going on. So if we move into Twitter, you can always keep up with all the UofL Twitter accounts on the right hand side of the Cardinal Cup website. You just scroll down a little bit past all of our fun, interesting bios. You'll get to the Twitter widget. Um, that is a good way to keep up with news and notes that don't necessarily make the site or that don't necessarily make the Go Cards website either. Sometimes you find out some interesting things on the Twitter accounts that you don't find out from the website. I tweet as at best case scenario, BST case scenario. Polly is at Cardinal Couple. Jeff is at Card Couple Radio and at Jeff McAdams. Jared is at Mr. Anderson Jared, and Daryl is at Daryl Faust 4. Polly, you said she was probably recovering from the late night. I think that she might be all hands on deck trying to turn the baseball field back into a baseball field instead of a swamp after
Very
both
possible.
the rains and the river frogs visit last night. So it was really on brand, really, for them to have so much rain and have the soupy baseball field that they had.
She and Al Green are out there with the squeegees, trying to dry things up.
Yeah, but
Hey,
that's
Taylor
really,
Roby out there getting involved too. So
Oh, I'll tell you what, if Taylor gets out there, they may just put her in a pitch. Yeah.
she's gonna throw towels as hard as she can.
That's right.
To soak it up. They better squeegee off the top of the dugout if they're gonna put her up there throwing things around. Can't have her slipping and falling.
No. All right, good stuff there for sure. Yeah, follow us definitely on Twitter. We have a lot of interesting things that go on during the season when things are happening in what we call the summer slump or the summer doldrums. Here, we also bring up some other interesting items that may not necessarily be U of L sports related, but can certainly be fun to read and follow and interesting to look at. So, a lot of our friends at the University of Louisville sports in in campus and off campus down there are doing interesting things this year that they're putting that on Twitter, and you certainly want to keep up with them, stay in touch with them as they go along. So, with that in mind, I guess let's move on into just a little bit of what's going on with Louisville lacrosse. Yes, I know lacrosse season isn't until basically this spring, but there are 10 representatives from Louisville lacrosse right now who were in the World Championship Finals. That's down to just one team, or actually one team with Cardinals right now on it, and that is the Canadian team. You've got Scott Teeter, head coach, on the bench for them, as he is at Louisville, the head coach, featuring Kay Morissette, who has left her coaching role at Louisville to play, and of course is the queen of draw controls, and exhibited that the other night. Uh, Also, some other very good players. Remember Monica Negron, who we've seen in the press box over the last couple of years, playing for Puerto Rico. Coco Nakazawa, playing for Japan. Jared, taking a look at this is kind of an all-star of Louisville lacrosse over the past couple of years, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Just watching some that are current players on the team. You've got, it looks like, I believe the whole entire coaching staff is somehow involved, either coaching or playing, with Kay Morissette actually being a U of L coach that's playing on the team. And yeah, like you mentioned, also a couple of recent alums. Steph McNamara was a big one that stands out from a couple years ago. Hannah Morris, who led the team in scoring last year, who just recently graduated as well. Uh, but yeah, I think part of this is showing just some of the talent that Scott Teeter has been able to bring in for Louisville lacrosse, and as he's continuing to build the Louisville program, but also for some of the current players, it's just a great time and experience to be able to build and improve their skills. We see this with women's basketball a lot, especially some of the 3v3 like Haley Van Lith had recently. But it allows them to keep playing even in the off season to kind of tweak their skills and not get rusty.
Indeed, it does, and we can, if you're interested in it, as Case had mentioned just earlier, Case today on ESPN2, we get to see this Teeter Canada team go up against the United States of America. A noon got test. No Cardinals on the USA team, but certainly a wealth of them on the Canadian team. So, as one of our readers commented the other day, this may be one of those rare occasions where I'm cheering against the USA team against another outside, foreign power, because I want to see these Cardinals do well, Case.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that by I guess the transitive property, if the USA wins today, which would be I think their third straight. This is the fourth time in a row that USA and Canada are playing in this gold medal match. The 11th time in a row that the USA has made the gold medal match. But um, if the USA wins today, they will be single-handedly responsible for knocking out all of the Louisville teams because they beat two of them directly, and if they beat Canada today, they would have beaten three of them directly, and Canada beat the other two. So it's one of those weird situations where yeah, like one team has had a hand in touching all of the Louisville teams
And we
one way or
certainly
another.
we do know how good USA lacrosse is, but Jeff, take a look at some of these Cardinals that are playing there. Obviously, we mentioned
Some
Kay
big
Morris.
names.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you had Monica Negron, who was so fantastic when she was here. Uh, Anna Lotman playing
Mhm.
over for the Czechs over there. Wasn't too bad in her time here. Koko Nakazawa, who did some wonderful things last year for the team,
She got
Stephanie McNamara. 10
some
girls. I mean,
great highlights for Kokoro
yeah, this could be a
shown the other day.
Peter could just take these 10 and try to play anybody, right? It would be a fantastic team, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's other than the fact you won that on the court, but or on the field, but it's definitely a good core. It would be a good core and a good start to a team there. Any team that has Kay Morissette on, you got to be aware of just from draw control, meaning that you're going to have a lot of possession for whatever team K is on, because you win 2/3 of the draw control. That's a um, significant advantage for the team. But yeah, Kokoro Nakazawa showing some great moves, some great movement, slipping through some defense, doing a great job. Monica Negron has just always been a phenomenal player and great person to to learn lacrosse knowledge from too, to boot. So I've always had plenty of that. So there's some great stuff in there. Yeah, the Canadian team alone is what would we say, six more that players on it that are
4 players, 2 coaches.
okay. 4 players, 2 coaches. Yeah, you know,
3 players, 3 coaches, but one is
one is playing.
with
Yeah,
Kay Morissette. Yeah,
yeah. That's pretty impressive. I mean, obviously, it speaks to Peter's recruiting. Is he's going to be recruiting a lot of Canadians, but given his background, but it's a great opportunity for these players to go play on this level.
It is indeed, guys. And I'll tell you, if you're a coach in D1 or even D2 level and you want to develop somebody for your draw control, you could do like a 30-minute highlight tape on what Kay Morissette has done over her career playing for Louisville and also with Team Canada, and just show that to prospective players and say, see what she's doing here, see how she's getting this done. Just try to emulate Kay. Try to do what Kay's doing, and you'll end up being a pretty good draw control specialist there. Of course, Kay was also able to score quite a bit too, so that was another thing that kind of benefited her at the time of Louisville. And keep in mind also, these two have already met in this tournament. Okay, they played in the opening round, and the USA took a 16-11 victory over Canada. So Canada's got a little bit of revenge, I think, lined up here to try to get this back and maybe take the championship, Jared, coming out of that losers bracket and making it to the finals.
Yeah, well, now that you've gotten a chance to see each other in action already this same tournament, it allows you to spend more time kind of making your adjustments on what you need to improve and locate the weaknesses of your opponent. So I think oftentimes when you have to play somebody again, it's more of the team that came out in the loss column will have a little bit more advantage in the rematch, just because now you're kind of playing for a revenge, but you've had a chance to see your opponent and make adjustments as need be.
Yeah, and certainly the match being played at Johnny Unitas Stadium, of all things. I don't know about his lacrosse skills. I don't think they were very much, but they named the stadium after him at Townsend, a very school which we know from basketball a little bit here. I'm not sure how their actual lacrosse skills are. I haven't followed them too closely, but that's where they're playing in Maryland, and it'll be like I mentioned noon today. Jump on over and watch that one on ESPN2 after you're done listening to us here today, and we'll see if they've gotten a little bit better going through that losers bracket and can take on a USA team, which guys has a ton of players from Maryland and the ACC on it. That was Jeff kind of looking at that roster that Team USA had, and it's just not recent players either. They go back a few years on this roster, bringing in some of the best who have ever played lacrosse in the ACC and also at other schools.
Yeah, I haven't looked at it, so I don't know who all you're referencing, but
Oh, it's
certainly
amazing.
if yeah, doesn't surprise me. I mean, if you're gonna build an American lacrosse team, you're gonna have a lot of Maryland players on there, players from the Maryland area at least. Where they go to school, obviously, is questionable, but it's just such a hot spot for lacrosse. Maryland and the ACC in general is more broadly. Um, but just the state of Maryland, for some reason, has had this real hot spot for lacrosse. So you're going to get a lot of players from that area, and I think it's a testament to that the U.S. team is, beyond the fact that they're in the championship game, is a pretty good team to be. Obviously, gonna have a chance of running the board here. So.
And certainly hope that Canada. Yeah, I'm going to come out and say it. I want Canada to beat USA. Yeah, don't call me unpatriotic. I just want to see the Cardinals do well.
Yeah, I think it's totally legitimate to cheer for individual players on
Yeah,
other teams and say, hey, I'd love to see them have success. Not denying anybody's patriotism here, but we got a lot of rooting interest as UofL fans on Canadian teams. So sure, let's I want to see a good game. I don't want to see anybody get hurt. All those good sportsmanship things too. But yeah, I'd like to see a good Canadian win here to see the UofL players and coaches get those accolades.
an exciting match for sure.
Could be a good recruiting opportunity if some current players are looking to enter the transfer portal and for Scott Teeter to see if he can't pick them up for the Cardinal squad going forward.
That is very true. Yeah, somebody who's maybe playing there. Well, we'll see what happens out of it. But certainly, the transfer portal with all the mysteries and intrigue involved with that certainly is available also in the lacrosse world, and other players do jump in there and go to other schools occasionally. So maybe the Cards can pick up a few in that portal. But,
I have a quick poll question for you guys.
sure.
Do you think Johnny Unitas knew what lacrosse was?
No.
Trying
Nope.
to think of
He died in 2002.
the Louisville
No.
campus, and when he was there,
Nope.
had no lacrosse going on
Oh,
whatsoever.
definitely not then. But I mean, he
Okay.
lived in Maryland
Which
in the
has
latter part of
always
his life,
been a
which has
banner
been a
yeah.
a hotbed of lacrosse. So
He might have heard of it, but
he definitely would be surprised to know that a massive world championship lacrosse event was being played at a stadium named
stadium
after him.
named for it. Yeah.
He would be like, "What are you talking about?"
It would be interesting indeed if they could, possibly, even talk about it. Well, Johnny, when he played lacrosse at Louisville back in the no, he didn't. No, he
Yeah.
was known for a couple of other things besides knocking a lacrosse ball around with a net. But although it's not season for it, we have word from the University of Louisville Athletic Department that the 2022-2023 women's basketball program now has their tickets open, season tickets open. So interesting for that to actually take place so early in the year because I haven't seen a full schedule yet, guys. And I don't know if there's one out there yet. We have basically a general idea
I don't
of
think
what
so yet.
we're going to do as far as conference goes. We were fairly certain that we'll be playing Kentucky again. I would imagine there would be a couple of other in-state schools that might cross that schedule as well, depending on how it goes. Wallace is usually good about taking a trip somewhere early in the schedule somewhere. Where he's going this year, I don't know. But, just looking at this thing here real quickly, the prices for this are not bad at all. Jared, if I told you, you could sit in the lower level bowl for $173 for the season and have half court seats, that about maybe what 12, 14 games. That's a pretty amazing deal.
Yeah, and that's why part of the reason why Louisville women's basketball has had such great attendance. Obviously, the success that they've had is the key contributor, and the outgoing relations that they have with the public and the fan base, such as autographs and post game pictures and whatnot, but also just keeping the ticket prices down to what you can consider affordable. You're going to continue to grow your season ticket holder numbers that way, as opposed to other sports on campus that have continuously raise their season ticket prices, and the number of those committing to season tickets is continuing to drop. I know there's a certain sport that you uh, decided not to renew yours on, Paulie.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of my own disillusionment with a sport on the men's side, where I remember some very, very golden and glory years for men's football. Okay, and enjoyed it quite a bit. But I've been kind of soured on the program over the last couple of years. I don't think we're headed in the right direction, and I decided basically I'm not going to support it financially anymore. Okay, that's money I can invest into other sports on the women's side as well, that would do something in line with what I'm interested in these days. Naturally, I hope them well. I hope they have a banner season. I hope they get a great bowl bid, but they're going to do it without me in the seats. So
Got
that's
some
just
great recruiting going on. So
yeah. They've been talking up their recruits quite a bit, Jeff,
yeah.
and some of the guys that they're bringing in here to play. The thing is, when you take a look at ACC football, there are some very, very good teams in the conference, and I just don't think we're one of them. Okay, I could be wrong, but I just don't think we're there. But
Yeah, when you talk about recruiting, and this isn't just football alone, but it's every sport, is you can't just assume that your recruits are going to perform well at the next level. I mean, they may be all stars at the high school level and they could get to college, and this could be any sport, and they just never can catch up to the level of play that you see in college. And it's the same when you go from collegiate level to professional sports. You can talk somebody up all you want, but until you see them play at that respective level, I mean, you don't know what they're going to do.
so, Jeff, if you were going to go out as kind of a spokesman for women's basketball here to sell season tickets, which I think would be fun just to hear you make a speech to a prospective group of fans on where they should go. What are some of the things that where people who have maybe never been to a U of L women's basketball game? What's some of the things we could do to get them in there just to see it one time?
Well, first of all, I think there's another Jeff that's much better at this than I will be.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So, no, it's the pitch is something along the lines of it's a great family outing, friendly environment, uh, relatively inexpensive for an evening's entertainment, excitement, high speed, high pace sports play. You hear a lot of people talk about, women's basketball being slow and unathletic compared to men's. But man, come on, UofL. And maybe that's true on average for women's basketball. Maybe I'm not even sure I'm willing to admit that, but come watch UofL. This is high paced, high action, high intensity, and it's a lot of fun. It's just super fun and just a great opportunity to get people out and enjoy without having to throw elbows to get through the concourses for the most part, because it's not super crowded usually. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Well, you can certainly throw elbows if you want, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Well, you don't need to get through the
You might
concourse.
hurt somebody.
Yeah.
Don't do that. But
I just feel like anytime I've been there for men's basketball games, I like to throw elbows to be able to get to a hot dog.
yeah, I've seen you do that too, and there's a lot of people that are scared of you now.
Yeah, well,
You say
I gotta have room to do the CARDS cheer.
Don't get near this guy, okay? My goodness gracious. One of the things too, also about little women's basketball, is right now the program in itself is working without a women's basketball sports information director right now. Okay, they're kind of filling in the gaps here a little bit. We do know that Matt Paris is coming down from Notre Dame and will be taking the job basically at the end of July. He's been named as the guy who's going to coordinate stuff also something that Jared and I is interested as well is coordinating our media passes through them to see what happens there. I did kind of talk with Lori Cordy about this the other day, just to let you know, who's such a great SID for field hockey and for softball. And she said that she promised she would keep an eye on things for me and make sure that we got our media passes, Jared. So at least we know that's going to happen.
Glad to know at least. So we've got field hockey and softball ready to go. So it's
Yeah.
a couple sports down, many to go.
But it'll be interesting to see if they throw the full schedule on this guy coming in here, y'all, that they had on Nick Evans. Women's soccer, obviously, also lacrosse, obviously, too, that Nick had to do in addition to women's basketball. Do you take a guy that's just coming in here for the first time and he three pretty big sports on him like that? What's your thoughts on this case?
Sorry, this is zoned out just briefly. Are you talking about getting Nick Evans, right? Or yeah.
Yeah, with Nick being gone and Matt
Oh, right.
Paris coming in, do you load up his schedule right away with three major sports like that?
That's tough. I know that we've seen it before with people having to carry quite a bit of a load on the SID side, and it can be detrimental, not intentionally, but to the lesser, not lesser, the less maybe
Mainstream.
yeah mainstream. I was gonna say intensive, like time intensive sports from an SID perspective. I mean, when you talk about basketball, it's going to play the most games on a schedule outside of the diamond sports, which are playing more games, but usually event based. It's about the same as basketball. They just play 3 games per event usually. But the basketball, just the travel and the number of games that you have to play, and if you it overlaps both fall and spring, it's really tough to kind of carry all of that. And it's why you saw on the men's side Kenny Klein manage basketball solely. I mean, he was the head SID for the entire university, so he was also managing all of the other ones, but that was the sport he was responsible for. And sure, men's basketball probably from an SID perspective has more to handle, and he was handling a lot of outside stuff too with his role with the NCAA events. But women's basketball is just as challenging when you're talking about just the UofL events, and I think that it would be tough for someone coming in, acquainting themselves with the university, acquainting themselves with all of the sports and how things go, and everyone trying to figure out the path forward with Kenny being gone now, and what that's going to look like from an entire department perspective. I think it would be asking a lot to put that many sports and a sport like basketball on someone's plate.
I think it may be, and we'll have to see how they kind of balance that around. Obviously, one of the things that you got to look at too is what other SIDs on campus do you have would be willing to kind of pick up the slack on this thing here as well. Lori's got a pretty full plate that she has to cover. I think Rocco's kind of wanted to stay with football and football only in his time on campus. So, Jared, it's an interesting kind of thing to do. And another thing which I'll want to get your input on is we normally have a women's fall sports media day down on campus around the end of July, start of August, with a couple SIDs coming in new and the main SID missing. What do you think about that event? Is that something that can still be carried on?
Yeah, I think you can still rely on your other SIDs to kind of set that up. And the coaches for the fall sports at this point are all fairly veterans, so it shouldn't be a difficult thing to set up. It just depends how much interest it's actually drawn in past years if they want to go through the time and trouble of actually having the fall sports media day as opposed to certain media coverages like ourselves want to reach out to individual sports and just set up our own, which chooses to do on this one.
And just to kind of let you all know, I have started making a few inroads on that. I did talk a little bit about trying to get Justine's salary interview next week. And I've been told that she's out of town till the end of the month. She's gone back to Australia to visit. So,
Cool.
not able to convince Lori Cordy to buy me a ticket to interview her in Sydney. I am going to wait for her to come back to Louisville before I interview here. Also, next week I'll be endeavoring to talk a little bit to, obviously, the Louisville women's soccer program and seeing what I can do about getting some interviews down there and see what I can do with Karen Ferguson Days. If need be, I will send Case in to do a quick, brief interview that would probably be stopped after 2 minutes when she stops and discussed on
I was
Case's
gonna say,
questions.
if you just want the interview to be fast and loose, then we can make that happen.
I doubt that they would let you even pass the security at the door, Case.
We'll have to get.
I'm gonna
We got to
show
get
up.
Case out to some matches
I'm
again
gonna
this
show
fall.
up for a media pass, so they're gonna be like, "You can't come in." We're like, what?
Wait a second.
Karen saw you crossing the railroad tracks. She said no. Okay.
That's right.
Sorry.
Security was supposed to stop you in the parking lot. Where did you park? Yeah. All good fun there as well. And Karen's always a fun interview preseason because even though they've, their season was average, it was so, it wasn't fantastic, but it wasn't bad. She's always so bright and optimistic about the upcoming season when I talk to her during the fall before the actual season start. That it's just always fun to go in and talk to her and also catch up with some of the players, past and current that play there. So it could be a good time. We'll get that going for you all as the seasons go on. I look forward to getting back into some of the interviews after going through some health issues last year. Wasn't able to do as much as I could. Beware, he's back on campus. Be warned. Somebody who's not on campus but back with the Sparks. How about this? Kiana Smith was drafted by LA, let go, but then brought back in. A big move for her, Jeff.
Yeah, obviously it's a great opportunity. We talked earlier in the late in the spring as WNBA was kind of gearing up a little bit. We talked about how tight the roster space was for a lot of these players that were getting drafted. We got a lot of players that are playing well into their middle age sort of ages and doing amazing things with it. We see Sue Bird on her, essentially her farewell tour at this point. At least a couple players that have basically been with the WNBA since pretty much the very beginning of it. So, roster space is tight. So we've seen a lot of really great players that we've cheered for that have been UofL players that have gone on that have ended up getting waived from these teams. It's a great opportunity for Kiana to get called back. It's nice to be in essentially her hometown and to be able to play in front of, friends and family is great. She came in, she already immediately started having some impact. She got to play the other day, got a bucket, got a layup. So that, obviously helps her chances in the future. So great opportunity for her. It is just a 7-day contract, so it's probably almost over. I think there's some regulations about what type of contracts we were talking about before the show and how many they can be signed to. So we may not see her on the team the whole rest of the season, but it sounds like she's going to at least get, a few opportunities to make her case for continued play in the WNBA.
And Jared, let's kind of take a look at the whole contract situation and stipulation that brought her back in. She's on what they call a 7-day contract after being granted a hardship exception by the WNBA. The Sparks obviously have quite a few guards and players out right now. So the NBA only allows these 7-day contracts in the back half of the season, which we are right now, and they are for base minimum salary. Well, still you're on the team, right? But you can only sign a player to a maximum of 3 7-day contracts in one season. I know it gets kind of confusing when you get into that part of it, but it certainly is something that I think, conceivably she could get a 21-day contract with 3 7 days. We'll have to see how that happens, I guess.
Yeah, it looks like based off some of the injury reports for the Sparks that they've got some players who are going to be out on a more long-term recovery rehab assignment. What hurts Kiana Smith right now is I believe we're kind of at an all-star break, so we're not going to see any WNBA regulation games for
Right.
several days, which I guess if with her contract, I believe ends Sunday, so tomorrow, or possibly Monday. So I mean, I guess if there's a time you want to go on and let your 7-day contract end and maybe have a little void before hopefully finding another one, now's the time because there's really no point in getting signed to a 7-day contract if the team isn't going to play any games. So thankfully, she did get a chance to see action in both games they had scheduled this week. Fairly productive output in both. Uh, you hope the Sparks will want to bring her back for another 7-day contract or her two remaining 7-day contracts. If not, maybe another team out there will pick her up for part of the season. But I think it definitely puts her in a good spot for a potential roster spot somewhere next year.
You just love to see it, and it's always amazed me that nobody's ever picked up Asia Taylor again after all the great times that she had in the WNBA and how well she's played overseas too with various squads. I'd like to see her get another shot in the league, but such is the world of the NBA, get WNBA guys. You never know for sure. One thing we do know for sure, we know what women's golf is going to be doing in the fall. Kay's kind of breaking that to us today, and Jared, kind of guys, let's talk about this. This is a tough schedule for Louisville. They got to go down to South Carolina to start out down there in the Cougar Classic down there. And they're playing in a very, very competitive ACC match. But Whitney Young's had some success here. And I guess we'll kind of, whoever wants to break into it and start in that case, since you wrote the write up on it there, maybe you get into it a little bit here. We're playing in a tough conference, but we've got some talent on this golf team.
Yeah, and that's been one of the things that we've seen recently is UofL golf have a lot of success, or you know decent success from individuals, but struggle to put that together. One of the good things about golf is, like tennis, you can have an individual, uh, kind of advance on their own, but and like track and field as well. But you'd like to see, because it is ultimately a team sport, you'd like to see this women's golf team make some noise from a team perspective, and then also see a lot of the players perform more consistently. Which it's golf. That's extremely challenging to do. You're gonna have to be able to weather good days and bad days from your best players. But if the rest of the team can kind of make up some of the gap and not be so dependent on some of the top stars, then you can potentially make some more noise in the postseason tournaments. That the um, the ACC championship is all the way in April, which is 54 hole stroke play. So that's the kind of event that's 3 days, 18, 3 rounds of 18 holes each. That's the kind of event that you've seen Louisville, appear in maybe the top 5 um, on day 1, stumble a little bit on day 2, or maybe fall apart on day 3. You'd like to see some consistency and be able to carry that through, um, so that they can qualify for a regional, which is at the beginning of May, and then maybe even advance to the championship series, or the championship rounds, which I don't know that we've seen them do before. One of the things that I thought was interesting about this schedule coming out is that Louisville's going to host, the only event that they will quote unquote host is the Moon Golf Invitational, which will be the 7th time they've hosted that. That's to open the spring season, so the second to last week of February. And that is in Melbourne, Florida, but they will not host any events at the Cardinal Club, which, I mean, it's a nice course. It's right here, and it seems wildly underutilized by the UofL golf teams as far as hosting events goes. When they play all the way through the fall and the spring, it seems like there's a lot of time to fit in a decent weather event in Louisville, Kentucky. But women's golf will have to travel for all their events this year.
And then it's kind of baffling to me too when you've got this beautiful golf course out there in Simpsonville, which is used for a lot of different events and things. They're going to have the media day out there, golf tournament out there as well. But why can't our own team here on campus, a D1 sport, play a home match on their home course. It's baffling to me. Jared, is there anything going on here we're missing?
And not to my knowledge. I know it's a beautiful course that's actively used for much of the year. Um, just the general person can pay a healthy amount of money to have their own membership, but why UofL doesn't take more advantage of it after investing what somewhere in the low millions a few years ago to buy the property and then renovate it. I just don't understand why they don't, do more. It's a great place, and even if you want to do some, call it like a Battle of the Bluegrass, or for copyright purposes, if you have to name it something else, but just host a bunch of in-state schools for events. Bellarmine's got men's and women's teams. Kentucky has them. Several other schools here in town or in the state have men and women's golf teams. Host a big old invitational extravaganza, something. I think it'd be nice.
And, Jeff, I'm sure that Whitney Young is doing everything on her end that she can to maybe try and get some of these things that Jared has discussed and we've talked about through, where we can get a little more of a presence at on our own home turf and maybe bring in some of the local programs and there around the Commonwealth of Kentucky to play out there. But is it, unfortunately, I wonder if it's just something where the men aren't doing much out there either. Is
I,
it
don't-
across
I,
the board? Yeah.
the cynic in me thinks that maybe they don't want to forego the revenue of having people play it to close it off to be able to have a competition like that. I don't know. I have no reason to believe that's true, but it is a very nice course. It is, they sell memberships to people, and when you have a membership to a course like that, you want to be able to go out there and play the course, and have dinner at the restaurant there, which I also hear is very nice, and all that. So if you're closing that off, you're foreclosing that to even the members in order to have competition. So I don't know. I have zero knowledge about this. Golf is not my favorite sport, but it sure would be nice to be able to have the team playing here, play on their home course, to have that familiarity with it in a competitive environment. So I would love to see it for them.
Without the star power of Lauren Hartledge, like the squad has had in past years, it would be, I think, an interesting interview to try to get down there and then talk with Kelly a little bit about this program, about the schedule, and some of the players that we can look for and to write about. Because basically, I'm kind of at a loss to see too many of them, right now being as one of the top golfers in the nation after Lauren Hartledge. But we're always ready for surprises, aren't we? Yes, we are. Things were going on last night, though, with a Racing Louisville. How about Racing Louisville? Our good team that has two women's soccer players on it, and obviously Amina, we love to death, and then Allison Whitfield are on the squad. What's going on here, Jared? They lost a tough one last night to Gotham, of all places. Was Batman there? Did Robin show up, Commissioner Gordon?
Well, soccer is one of those. I feel like that it's pretty common to be in a field sport where scoring is a little bit more limited, where losses aren't as much of a surprise, because you may just end up seeing like a 1-0 match. And sometimes with the field sports, the first team to score may be just enough to hold on to win. And that happens. When you look at it in the long run, I think it depends more how they just perform, which I'm trying to find the pool standings right now to see where Racing Louisville sits. And
It's like 7th. It's not good. 6-game winless streak is not helpful.
so they've got a little work to do, is basically what it sounds like. But I do like having the dual Cardinal alums on there right now, and hopefully Allison Whitfield will be able to make enough of an impression that she will find a way to sign a full-time contract with the top squad instead of, I think she's been down with the lower level squad for most of the season before she got called up due to some players being gone and traveling.
They actually
And
fell
then
to
I
10th last night. Sorry.
and then I believe Amina, has pretty much been with Racing Louisville since day one when they drafted her. Smart move to get a big time local player like that in. Uh, but I think this is probably just the beginning of helping establish just a strong women's soccer program from youth up through professional in the city of Louisville. When I was growing up, I felt like there wasn't much of a women's soccer anything going on in the city once you got past the high school level. And then, Karen Ferguson days came in and kind of helped build the UofL program. And since then, UofL had a not large, but a small input in terms of when Racing Louisville came to town. Uh, yeah, I'm happy to see that we have a couple Cardinals on there that helps draw some local interest.
It is a tough loss case that they had last night to Gotham, or the New York team up there, Gotham FC. I mean, I did get out there, and then I actually had a chance to score, but couldn't quite knock one in. Free kick, but it's good for, I think, the University of Louisville to have a pro team down right within 5 miles of the campus, right?
Yeah, and like you mentioned, getting Allison Whitfield to that team, um, even as a replacement player during this international uh, duty period. She is yet to make her debut in the two games. She's been on the bench. She's been available, but hasn't been put in. Um, we've talked a lot about that USL W Series team that they have, which I believe is still, I think it's still in its season, that has a ton of Louisville players on it.
They've got one more game.
They've got one more game. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how the schedule will work out, whether Allison Whitfield will be back to that team if the international events will be over. It'd be nice to see her get into a match. Looks like they have a game next Friday. So I don't know if that. I think that the CONCACAF tournament will be over, so a lot of the Racing Louisville players, the CONCACAF tournament will be. Women's Euro won't be. So
Yeah, the Euro goes later. Yeah,
we'll see if she's still on the team then, if she can get in.
I think the contract went through the end of the month, so probably will be officially. Whether available for selection would be
right. Whether she gets put on the team. Yeah. But it'd be nice to see her get in. As for having this team here, like I mentioned, having a ton of Louisville players on the USL, the lower division team, is extremely helpful. We've seen it result in a player getting added to the full squad. I think that getting the opportunity for girls in the area to see the pipeline that you have, both through the academy. We've seen multiple Louisville or multiple racing players tweeting about how players should be able to. There shouldn't be an age restriction on getting called up, and how an academy player that is committed to Louisville from Ballard should be eligible to play, but isn't just because of her age. And so having that team right here in the area is really beneficial for girls coming up in high school and club, and then as well as having Louisville on board. If you are an academy player and you need to go to college, probably not bad to just go right down the road from the team that you're academying for. Would be pretty beneficial. So I think that it does help a lot. As for the struggles the team is facing, is what it is. They're only in their second year. They were really performing above expectations earlier this season. I think they've kind of come back down to earth. A lot of the players and a lot of the coaching staff have pointed out that they're right there. 6-game winless, but I think 2 of them are draws. Some of them have been pretty close. Last night was a goal scored by Gotham in the 80th minute to take the lead. Louisville outshot Gotham 23-9 or something. Outrageous. Their expected goals was more than double, and the ball just sometimes doesn't fall in to the net the way you want it to. As for Amina herself, I'd love to see her get more opportunity to play full matches. I don't know if it's a fitness thing. I don't know if they're asking a lot of her from the position she's playing, but getting not subbed off seemingly every match that she starts would be nice, because that would then indicate that when they're at a full squad strength, that she would be more likely to get in the game. Scoring and then almost scoring on a free kick in back-to-back games is definitely enough to help her case, but like to see her on the field a little bit more.
The facility in itself down there is a beautiful one, and we certainly encourage all listeners and women's soccer fans to get down there to catch a match down there and watch Racing Louisville and see what they can do. Certainly, they are a competitive squad, and it's always fun if you enjoy women's soccer. This is the top level for you to enjoy that. So get down and do that. Ending today on a very sad note, unfortunately, and we won't get into a lot of detail on this, but Ava Jones, who was here in town for the Run for the Roses tournament being held at the Kentucky Fair and Exposition Center out there, and her family was actually touring the city a little bit. And on Tuesday, they got run down on the sidewalk by an impaired driver. We found out that her dad has passed away from his injuries. The mother and, of course, Ava are still unconscious. This is so sad, Jeff, in so many aspects.
It is, there's multiple levels to it. I mean, obviously, you got kids there that are getting run down by an adult making some bad decisions, some clearly bad decisions there, and that's just tragic in and of itself. The serious injuries are definitely tragic. The loss of life is tragic. Um, it's I think there's a little bit added to it in that Louisville is such a supporter as a citywide, such great supporters of women's basketball. And we have this great tournament going on here for players to come. I was downtown in Nulu last night, and man, there were preteen and teen girl basketball players all over the place. There were tons of them. I saw a Stanford assistant coach at the bar I went to. So but like big supporters of this field and this endeavor, and then to have this happen to one of the players and families coming here is obviously it's almost a little embarrassing. Like to go, oh God, that looks so bad for Louisville for that to happen to them. Obviously, it's tragic. It's only one person's bad decision, but you hate to see that happen. And obviously, our thoughts are with the family, with the teams involved, friends. We know there were more family members back home that didn't make the trip to Louisville, so obviously they're dealing with, you know, serious injuries and loss of life to family that's out of town. That makes it just that much harder to deal with. So, yeah, it's tough.
We hope that she can recover. And Jared, she was an Iowa recent commit. She had actually started out as an Arizona State commit, but uh, Charlie Thorne out there, a fantastic coach for many, many years with the Sun Devils, uh, she decided to step down and retire. And once that happened, Ava kind of changed her commitment, got involved with Lisa Bluter out with the Iowa basketball program, women's basketball program out there. And Ava actually had just committed to them on Sunday. And then for this to happen, it's so sad, Jared.
Yeah, and I think there's no excuse for that driver to have put themselves in that situation in the first place, and it was certainly an unfortunate wrong place at the wrong time for Ava Jones and her family, and you know, you have to think that this could have happened to anybody that could have been just downtown walking along the sidewalk or scootering along the sidewalk, and it really is just an unfortunate incident, and uh, as Jeff mentioned, I think it's a really bad look for the city. You know, you don't want to be associated as, oh, this is a city where, bad things happen. You see, impaired drivers or you see other violence. And hopefully, some changes will be made and people will start to learn that they need to grow up and be more mature. But all we can do is hope for the best for the family that's still in the hospital recovering. And hopefully we'll be able to see Ava Jones out in an Iowa uniform here in a couple years, actually
Yeah,
playing and competing.
absolutely, too. Hoping that that will happen for her. And, so sorry that her dad passed away, too, and so sad. But anyway, yeah, if you're listening here, don't do drugs and drive, folks. Okay? It's just not a great idea. All right? Bottom line, don't do it. Okay? But guys, taking a look down here, we have almost reached the noon hour. Certainly had a fun show with you today. So, as we like to do, we'll kind of roll up to the guys and do some final thoughts of the broadcast for you. And Case, let's just go ahead and start with that with you. Final thoughts.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it with soccer. Didn't mention it earlier, but Chinyelu Asher, former UofL player playing with Jamaica in the CONCACAF W Championship right now. Um, she did not play in their first match when they won against Mexico. She played the entire match when they unfortunately got blown out versus the USA. But they play again on Monday evening, Monday night, really. They're taking on Haiti for what is effectively a de facto second place game for that Group A to advance to the semifinal knockout stages. Both of those teams are 1-1 in the group, so the winner of that would go to 2-1. If they draw, Haiti would win because they have a better goal difference. So Jamaica and Asher would be looking for a win there to advance to the semis. The winner of this event would, I believe, get an automatic qualifier for the World Cup, Women's World Cup. So that would be pretty big for them. I don't think that Jamaica has a super great chance of making it otherwise. So would look forward to that game Monday night for them to try and advance.
Could be fun. Kind of an underdog story there to follow for sure. Jeff, what you got for us on final thoughts?
Month and a half to volleyball. Yay. I don't have much else than that today. Counting down the days.
Yeah, kind of waiting for that to get going again, and certainly happening on campus. So, Jeff, with a brief final thought, he has nothing on his mind. Okay, we don't know if that's a normal kind.
It's a good weekend state to be.
I think the good thing for Jeff is that he doesn't have to keep track of the number of days to volleyball because he can just figure out how many days volleyball starts before football, and then somebody else keeps track of the football countdown, so he can just do the math.
Yeah, there is that. I don't do it that way, but I could.
I hope to be hearing some news about the volleyball program down the road here a little bit, stuff like that, on what's happening and stuff like that. So, Jared, what you got for me on final thoughts?
I don't have much. I've just been trying to take it easy the last few days, so I'm ready to gear up and for August, mid-August to come sooner, so I can get back out at some of these fields and courts and arenas and whatnot to capture a lot of UofL games. I think it's going to be a spectacular season for many of our women's sports.
Yep, it should be indeed, and we'll certainly be looking forward to all of those coming up. As far as final thoughts out of me, just with this Louisville takes over, the network and such today. I hope it, I know that they're trying to put all the Louisville programs in a fairly good light. I certainly would have loved to seen more women's programs take over the ACC network, limiting it just to basketball and to volleyball. No. Lacrosse, not lacrosse, but field hockey had a wonderful season, and they should be, I think, represented a little bit in there. And I'll be quite honest with you. What did men's sports do this year? Huh? Come on. ACC, give us a little more prop on the women's side of things. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening today. It's been a lot of fun. We'll be with you next week. Unless you know something I don't, at 11 a.m. for the Cardinal Couple Radio Hour podcast. Hope everybody has a great weekend and go Cards.